Welcome everyone to NCEA's Catholic Culture in the Elementary Classroom, the Faith-Filled Classroom webinar. My name is Kate Reich and I am on hand to help with any technical questions about today's event. Before we begin the presentation, please know that all of your microphone connections with today's webinar have been muted. During the presentation, you may ask questions or provide comments for the presenter by using the chat and/or question functions located in the Go To Webinar panel on the right side of your screen. To use these functions, click on the chat or question bubble and then click into the blank box area and enter your question using your keyboard. Then click Send. We also invite you to post your questions on todaysmeet.com. I just sent out the URL to that website if you would like to post your questions in this way. That link is todaysmeet.com/faithfilledclassroom. Second, the webinar presentation will run for 45 minutes, leaving some time at the end for the presenter to answer any questions that you have provided. Third, you will be asked to complete a brief evaluation about this webinar later today, and your feedback is greatly appreciated. Lastly, this webinar is being recorded and you will all receive a copy of the final recorded presentation, which we will email to you once that recorded file is available. Before we jump in, we'd like to get an idea of who is joining us tonight. So I'm going to launch just a quick poll and ask you to take a second or two to make a selection about the role that best describes you. Just helps us get a better picture of who we're talking to. And I'm going to close the poll in about 2 seconds. So I want to thank you all for participating. And it looks like we have a lot of teachers here tonight. So I want to thank you all for being here. Certainly our principals and other folks within our Catholic school system. And with that, I would like to introduce you to Jim King. He's our interim director for the NCEA's Elementary Schools Department, and he is today's presenter. Please welcome Jim.
For those of you, hello, and welcome and have a good evening. For those of you on the East Coast, folks on the West Coast, good afternoon. For those elsewhere, hello. Whatever time it is, I guess. So I want to welcome you to this webinar from NCEA. We are looking at the faith-filled classroom. And so one of the things that we are going to be using that Kate already mentioned is this Today's Meet faith-filled classroom. If you can, go ahead and pull up a screen for that, because there's a point where I'm going to go ahead and have some of you all contributing. Hey, we got folks out in Arizona. Nice to see Barb in Nebraska. It's supper time there, so already folks are kind of chiming in on today's meet and getting a discussion going there. So if you haven't done that already, go ahead and do that. Just a little bit of background about myself. I am a former Catholic school teacher, principal, and so have actually spent a fair bit of time as well digging into this idea of the faith-filled classroom. And so we're going to go ahead and do that. We kind of already did a little bit of our own little poll here. I am going to go ahead and just tell you a little bit about part of my approach to this, which is why I'm really hoping that folks will get a conversation going to today's meet. Because I have the clean house with a junk room theory. This all stemmed off of a really good homily that I had once had the pleasure of listening to, and the pastor said he was kind of talking a little tongue-in-cheek about how he gets all these invitations to go around and join and have meals at people's homes and go around their homes and apartments, and inevitably people have these beautiful houses and kept their houses really nice or their apartments, but inevitably he ended up finding out that there was always kind of one room in the house that was the junk room in the house, where people just kind of, if you could keep the rest of the house in order and you just allowed yourself to have the junk room where you threw stuff, or if it was an apartment, into that one closet where everything just kind of got thrown. It was chaos there. So, oops, I'm just seeing a request for today's meet. So I'll finish the story and go ahead and put that back up. And basically he said in his homily, he's like, I'm talking to the people who are coming to church. The folks here really have pretty good, clean houses, you know, in your own life. But really probably the thing we need to do is just tidy up the junk room. You know, what's that little area? So realizing the fact that we everybody here is signed on to be a part of this conversation. So I think folks are really already going to have some miles down this road, as it were. So we're really just trying to figure out some nuances to how we can improve what we do in our own faith, building a faith-filled classroom. So along with that, I am myself still kind of learning all about this process, hopefully through sharing with each other. We got folks from Central New York, Kentucky, from Roswell. Oh, wow, in Kentucky, someone's saying, I only have a junk drawer. I am envious of you. You have an awesome life then. Barb's thinking that was her desk. So I am still learning along this process too. Hopefully folks can kind of share and just be respectful, or, you know, just understanding and sharing all these ideas. I do realize that hopefully I'm going to share some thoughts that you know, my random babblings may hopefully be useful. I do realize I've got a little bit of the picture of a huge one here, and hopefully that we can just kind of get some ideas going back and forth. And so I have a little clip here just to kind of get your mindset going a little bit. And so all right, so one of the things is that as the gentleman in the little clip there illustrates, sometimes we can be working so hard, but we lose our direction. And so that's why I thought at the beginning of the school year, while we're still kind of getting up and going, that it actually would be very timely to go ahead and take a look at what our focus really is as we're working so hard and getting ready for the school year launching off, and all that hard work, making sure that we do have that time to focus in on what it is that we are about as a school. There are all sorts of church documents and writings from the bishops and beautiful documents that could kind of quote to emphasize this point, but I think one of the best ones that I've come across is actually from one of my favorite writers, Father Nuzzi, who just kind of crystallizes this whole point in getting us to focus in on what it is that we are about as a Catholic school, right? We are there to bring our kids to lives where they will know, love, and serve God. And that's what we do. We're not about building more schools, even though we get terribly concerned in watching and helping and build the enrollment. That's not why we're doing this. So just kind of a good refocusing thought. And that's kind of the point of this webinar, is just to help ourselves focus on this mission a little bit. So today, the way that I've laid this out, borrowing a little bit wonderful title of this book, Building the Builders, we're going to do our own little micro retreat here. And I'm going to do some little bit of abstract thinking, getting us to think about how we think, about what inspires our thought process, and moving that forward and how we get ready. So, and then I am going to try to give you a few practical tips as well to work in here. So we're kind of have this little bit of retreat and reflection, and then a little bit of some practical pieces for yourself, and then as you go into the classroom. So there's going to be kind of a mix of a few things going on here. So hopefully if you were kind of looking for either one of those, there's going to be a little bit of everything. Glad to see the love and joy for Father Nosey's quote here. I think he's just great. All right, so kind of building up the builders. That's you all, especially those of you in the classroom. And I think this is an amazing quote that Dr. Schüttloffel offers us. It focuses on the idea that sometimes we focus a lot on the programs that we're doing, and they're all very valuable, but you all in the classrooms who work every day with the kids, they are gathering their faith from the example that you all provide. This is one of these pieces where I really would like the conversation to kind of get going, and if you're at today's meet, if you would kind of share your own thoughts on this quote. I encourage everybody to take a moment and just sort of log in and put some of your own reflections on this quote. It is offered by Dr. Schüttloffel, who I actually know fairly well, and her book, an NCEA publication, Character and the Contemplative Principle. But I think it goes a long way towards explaining and really what our focus is when we walk into the classroom. And for every professional, right down from the principal to those who work in the cafeteria, it is a big piece in the lives of everyone who is involved at the school. Knowing that that's really the witness that we all provide. So I'm bringing out how the kindergartners do this, but so a lot of nice thoughts starting to pop up on the today's meet. So let's see. Yeah. I love the quote there from Mary. We've been told that students learn better from a teacher who's passionate about their faith, not just a teacher who's teaching the book. And really, when we think back to what we see in Acts, what's written there, it is the passion that the early disciples had for Jesus and how they led their lives that inspired so many about what was great about Christianity. It's not that they wrote beautiful encyclicals. We need that sort of direction and things, but it's the passion that people live with, and it's what I firmly believe is how our students are going to learn best. So, and Kate, I love the re-emphasis of this is living purposefully. Oh, Kate put it out there from Lori and Jean. Thank you on today's meet. Okay, so as we move forward, this is why classroom teachers, I think you are so incredibly important to everything that we do in Catholic education. You all drive it, you make it happen, because you're the ones who have that day-to-day contact, the passion with the kids and interacting with their lives. Superintendents can draft great policies and principals can have beautiful goals, but if you all in the classroom are not making it happen, it just won't. Which kind of brings us to this thought from Tim Cook. Really, you classroom teachers are the ones who make this happen, which is kind of why this is also important. You all make the difference. And that's right, Barb. He is a Creighton professor from good old Nebraska, talking about today's meet popping up there, which I think it's also important to put out the rest of what he writes here. You Catholic school teachers are absolutely committed, more mission-driven, I think, than counterparts, and I say that having been a former public school and Catholic school teacher, definitely see it more. So your passion is amazing. So what we want to do is make sure that we have a strong passion and that we're able to think about our thinking, like I said. So I want to, as we do this thinking about how we're thinking, look at three particular concepts: community, story, virtue. And so as we look at community, we have all these different communities that impact our lives. We're surrounded by them. You have your professional community, you have your family, you have the folks within your neighborhood, but it goes in so many directions. And the impact that these communities have on us as individuals are profound. So when we look at this, we have to really be aware of the fact that our communities are so very impactful on who we are as people. And so it's worthwhile to take a little time and look and reflect on the different communities that we're a part of, in particular, who those communities were as we were growing and forming and looking back at, and kind of taking some personal time to reflect on, who were these different communities? How they impacted your life. Was it your immediate family, extended family? Was it part of the church groups that you were a part of? Was it part of the Scouts? And that had an impact. What were the different ministries, possibly that your families were involved with around the church? I can recall for myself, every holiday, before we had our holiday meals, at Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's, we were down at the church serving at the soup kitchen, and then we, after working pretty much the full day, then we went home and prepared our own. Impact that had on me as a kid, huge. So it's good to reflect on how these communities have formed us. Thinking about, too, what are the current communities in our life and how they impact us as we go forward in our current lives. And in that reflection, too, it's good to consider, are we missing out on something, too, in our communities? Do we need to be more involved? Is it, if you find that you gather a lot of inspiration from reflective writing, are you doing something that's being a part of a writer's group that kind of challenges you to make sure that you're doing that consistently? Are you at the church doing volunteer work, or possibly involved with your own faith formation, communities such as that, small groups? Communities, their impact on our lives, it is profound, that impact. And so we want to take a bit of time and go ahead and look, reflect what has been in our life, what's currently in our life, and what we need to add to have the type of lives that we want to live, especially considering how important it is on the students who we're responsible for. Now, our story as well, from our youth to our adulthood, is profound. You can just sort of imagine the story behind the picture here. Now, I happen to know the story because I'm the one who took that picture, and yes, those are 3 of mine, so pray for me. But when we think about our own story of our lives, we have, it's an interesting way of looking at our faith. When we look at it as a story, part of that is past, all the pieces that have contributed into the story of making us who we are, forming us. But also, there's a whole other dynamic, is that story is a continuing idea. Anyone who's ever seen the movie or read the book, The Never-Ending Story, can be kind of channeling that. But story is an ongoing concept that we want to make sure that we are constantly writing. It has formed us, it impacts us, but we can also continue to form and impact it. Also have some folks on today's meet kind of pointing out how our communities can include extended communities of social media as well, and how that fits in. And our story and our communities do tie together very, very greatly. Because one of the things that goes on with story is that they're this ongoing extension of our decisions, of how we're going forward in life. It is not a static thing. It's not a thing in the past. Our story is constantly being written. And it's a very impactful thing when we go forward and make the decisions of, as we move into life. And we come up with these moral dilemmas, these ethical dilemmas, and how to move forward. And when we start phrasing our questions in a way that's not, what's going to be the right thing to do, but we start thinking of it in terms of our life story. Does this fit my story? Am I going to be the kind of person in my own life story by making this decision that I'd like to be? That concept of story can be very impactful as we try to live and build our own spiritual lives. Now, the final piece of this is virtue and trying to live the virtuous life. Now, of course, virtue is having these specific principles that are the foundation of our life. Being virtuous isn't being perfect. It's about going ahead and having a virtue, having an ideal in which you commit your life to. And it's that ongoing process of our faith life, and having our ideals match every decision that we make, forming out these virtues that we're very familiar with and trying to act accordingly on a very consistent basis. So we all know, hopefully, very well versed in our Catholic virtues, the theological virtues, the cardinal virtues. And so those can have their strong impact on our lives. The other piece, however, is that what additional virtues do we see impacting our own lives? For myself, I think of St. Peter, and he has virtues that I really, really love to emulate. Now, it's kind of funny to me because when I look at St. Peter, I don't always necessarily think of the cardinal virtues of prudence or temperance. If we really closely look at the Gospels, St. Peter was all over the place. But the virtue that I love about him was passion. He was very passionate. And so we saw 2 weeks ago in the Gospel where St. Peter's passion, he's the one who actually steps forward when Jesus is saying, well, who do you say that I am? And everyone's kind of hemming and hawing, because if they say Son of God, that's heresy. And that's crime punishable by death. But Peter just jumps out there. He loves God so much. He's like, you are the Son of God. I know it. And I'm not afraid to say it. And then we go ahead and move forward into this week's Gospel, which is the very next sentence as you go forward through the Gospel, in which Jesus is saying, I need to take up my cross, go forward to Jerusalem and be crucified. And St. Peter takes him aside and goes, I know you're really putting that forward. However, I don't think we need to say that. And Jesus calls him out and says, get behind me, Satan. But in both those stories, if you notice, Jesus picks Peter to lead the church. He's the one who he wants because he loves Peter's passion. So that's one of my own personal things. And when I think about virtue and how I want to go ahead and live life, that for me, St. Peter's story is so impactful, and so we need to look at what those virtues are that we hold up and that we really want to live out so strongly in our life. Now, one of the reasons that I bring this out, community, story, and virtue, they're very key components from a thought process from Robert Nash, because these three are the foundation of our character. And it is in our character that it's a foundation to building out Catholic school culture. So when we talk about how our own personal lives profoundly impact the spiritual lives of our students, we need to be really kind of thinking through very vibrantly about and thinking through purposefully the impact of a community in our life, of our own personal story, what it's been and how it's impacting us, and what virtues do we hold our life's ideal up to as we go forward in our decision-making process. So I have one more of these sort of reflective thoughts before we start getting on to the practical, and it's some thoughts put forward by Thomas Ser Giovanni. Kind of a funny thing, he's obviously this man of Italian heritage who lived in Texas, who I think got a very clear bit of inspiration from the Irish. As he puts forward this idea on how we lead faith-filled lives and lead others in faith, he talked about the image of the head. And the head is all of our worldviews and how we see the world functioning and moving forward, but also our professional skills and our knowledge, and so all these kind of practical pieces. His other piece then, though, is the heart, our faith, our spirituality, these beliefs, and that is our heart. And so we kind of have our practical pieces, and we have our spiritual ideals. But those two blend together when we're in good harmony with our lives, and they act and blend by coming out in very clear actions, behaviors, decisions that are very consistent, with the two sides of our life. And one of the beautiful things that when you live and work in Catholic education, your practical skills and knowledge are able to match up with your personal values and belief system. And it's an incredible blessing, because not a lot of people get to have their personal faith lives blend so directly to their professional lives. And so it makes for an incredible opportunity. So, all right, so our little micro retreat reflection is kind of over, and we'll get a little bit into some of these practical pieces now of what are things that we can do. And so, as I've said, I want the first focus to be on some things that we can do for yourselves, because we know you need to build yourself up before you go into that classroom. And then once you're in the classroom, what are some again, practical pieces that you can be doing. So, which, as I go along here, please use today's meet, share some of your own ideas, the pieces that work well for your own life. Again, this is some of my thoughts and input that I've had from other folks, but also it's good to share, right in this live chat. So, finding your own time for prayer, reflection in your life is critical. You have to ask yourself, how are you doing that? Because life can be busy, it can be crazy. Everything from working late, I know over the last week and a half, there's the kids' sporting events, doctor's appointments, eye appointments. We had the pastor over for dinner in the evening, ended up having the emergency trip after football while the pastor was visiting, going to the emergency room. It all gets kind of crazy and it's helter-skelter. And so making sure that we each have that personal prayer time to guide us in going forward is so critical. Why? Again, going back to the faith. If we don't have our own strong faith life, how are the kids going to pick it up? I love how someone was talking about they use their own commute as their uptiming spiritual focusing time. Beautiful, beautiful. Using all those opportunities because it is St. Paul calls us to pray always, wherever we can, to keep working that into our day-to-day. So where are you finding your time to pray? I hope very critically, and we all have to do it, and I have to keep challenging myself very much, making sure to carve out personal prayer time throughout the day. Hopefully it's some good quiet time at home. Like we said, if it's during your drive and the commute, if it's taken 5 or 10 minutes to read a daily reflection before the kids come in the door, it's critical to do. Having time for your faculty to pray and come together. Hopefully your faculty is doing this. Principals, if you're out there, challenge and encourage you. Have faculty prayer time. Before the kids come in the door, set aside 10 minutes, get folks together. This was an idea that colleagues of mine who were working in other schools had, and theirs, and teachers, you can kind of petition and push this forward. But having that time to pray, share, exchange pieces about your own faith journeys, and do that. So please, 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 really encourage you to have that time as a faculty to come together in that way. And it was kind of very interesting. I knew the story of one school where one principal had made sure that the school had a time for the faculty to gather in the morning before the kids came in the building and pray all together. And then the new principal came in and said, boy, my mornings are so busy. I don't have time to get together for do that. I have too much to do in the morning. And so faculty prayed without the principal. But you know, what more important things can we do than pray together, right? So encourage us to do that. You know, some folks say, you know, I'll tell you what you value by where you spend your time. So we also, hopefully your school is doing school-wide prayer, you know, just kind of some of the basics. You have time to pray with each of your classes as kids come into the room. You're taking time for personal retreats. You know, you are attending church, having time for all of the sacraments, that you're doing things with spiritual direction or being active at the church. There's a whole variety of things. I love, again, more of the ideas coming out on today's meet. If you're following along or you haven't, make sure that you go ahead and put those out. Folks are sharing some websites, some exchange of different ideas there. So again, maybe it's liturgy of the hours for you and how you're building your prayer life, your rosary. Maybe you're more a tech-savvy person. And there are some great apps out there. 3-minute retreat, I think someone was just mentioning that on today's meet, that you go ahead. It is a brief focus retreat from the folks at Loyola Press. There are rosary apps. A nice other Jesuit reflection is Other Six. If we give our one day of prayer to God, what are we doing on the other 6? And it's a very nice one. It's actually sort of a socially interactive site in which you put up prayer requests and also your prayers of thanksgiving. So there's different pieces there. There's a variety of things that you can actually learn on the web to help your prayer life. So some nice reflections that are up there. I've actually, down below here is actually my Twitter handle, and these are pictures that are up under my Twitter pictures, so you can check that. But some little guides that you can find just by using the internet. So these reflections from Pope Francis, most of you are familiar with the Jesuit Examen. It's going ahead and coming out with different, whatever your, we're all drawn to slightly different forms of prayer, and that's okay. The important piece is that we're taking that time, no matter what your personal style of prayer is that you're most comfortable with and drawn to, are we taking the time to do it? Also working in some good spiritual professional reflection. These are a few of my favorites. Thomas Groom, who's up and out of Boston College. Education for Life is a book that I think every Catholic educator ought to read. It has some really good focusing pieces on what we do, why we do it. Some of the writing in there you could say is a little quirky. I know some folks are not as excited about that, but he has a lot of reflection questions in there as he goes along. But tremendous, tremendous thought. And again, here's the book that I had mentioned earlier, Architects of Catholic Culture from Tim Cook. You've got some pieces from Andrew Greeley. But look, whatever, again, those authors are that inspire you, but do some professional reading that also focuses on building your faith life. I had also mentioned how you can use the web to go ahead and build your faith life. The first web page up here is the Loyola Press, where you can go on. You don't have to use the app. If you're not an app person, you can access the 3-minute retreat from Loyola Press there. We also have Nick Singer, keeps an active blog. He is a Catholic deacon. He also works in Catholic school. He is actually a distinguished national Catholic Distinguished Award winner from NCEA teacher. Barb in Nebraska is also, she is on this chat right now. That's Barb in Nebraska that you all see on the Today's Meet. And she has a lovely faith-filled blog with all sorts of spiritual reflection ideas, is very active on Twitter as well. Her and Nick Catholic Ed Chat is a place that folks can gather through social media. And so that hashtag there is something that you would use on Twitter. For those of you folks who are not highly active on Twitter, I encourage you to think about doing that. It's a great source of professional development, and Catholic Ed Chat is a way of connecting with other Catholic educators, because at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, nearly every single Saturday morning, folks from across the country and literally across the world gather for discussions on Catholic education. So that is, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can do your time zone adjustments, but it's a great way of exchanging that. And folks, about a year or so ago, I was not very, very active on Twitter at all, and I found it a huge enrichment to my faith. So we talked about some things that you can be doing for yourself. Now also, let's take a little bit of time and think about our classrooms. So one of the most important things is make sure that we kind of bring that concept of your head, your heart, and your hands all in alignment in the work that you do within the classroom. Go ahead and be bold and bring your faith there. The other piece is consciously build a Catholic identity in your school, in your classroom, and a Catholic culture. These are two terms that I find that get used interchangeably, but mean actually different things. So I want to touch on that. So Catholic identity, these are some of the things that we do. They're the formal pieces. You could walk through a school and kind of checklist and say, okay, we attend Mass. Every Friday we go to Mass as a school. We go ahead and we have religion class during these times. We go, and during Lent, we have Stations of the Cross. In May, we have our Crowning of Mary. We do all these important rituals and pieces that help form out our faith, and they're very structured pieces, and they're concrete. We can see them and do them. Catholic culture is a piece that kind of forms off of that then. And when we talk about Catholic culture, and Tim Cook talks about this in his writings, this is then the way things are done. It's the cultural. It's less tangible and less concrete, but it's those unwritten rules about how things get done and how you are prayerful and supportive of one another. And when kids come to you with problems, say, oh, really want to pray about that with you, or we'll make sure that we write out a prayer intention for that. These, when people are aggravating with you, can you respond to them in a faith-filled way? It's the Catholic identity is having a strong faith-filled mission statement. The Catholic culture piece of that mission statement is that what we live in the school and actively do. So those are some ways that we do that. So so Catholic identity. Here's some ideas on how to build out Catholic identity. And again, these are as I've kind of gone through these materials, how I separate it out, and it's a useful thought process. So begin with prayer. And you know what? Our Hail Marys and our Our Fathers are beautiful prayers. They're incredible prayers. And when we are in October and the kids have said the Our Father 147 times, I think sometimes we lose our impact in this incredible prayer. So let's mix it up. We have such a diversity of prayer. Let's pull it all in, because unfortunately sometimes kids can go ahead and say the Our Father while tying their shoe, finishing 3 questions on their homework, and still, kicking the kid in front of them. We have to keep some of these things fresh and then keep working our common prayers, back in. We want to make sure as we build that Catholic identity that we've got, faith symbols in the classroom, that we're teaching kids all about these rich different forms of prayer. Do kids, when they're having problems or they're wanting to be thankful, do they have a place to put prayer requests in the classroom or those Thanksgiving prayers? Do you have ways? I've seen all kinds of creative ways, and this is way too short of a list to get all these ways in, but to connect your school to the parish and how formally you can support the parishioners, with little things like prayer requests. Are you conscious in observing the liturgical seasons and the colors in your room, reflect that? Of course, are you formally teaching? What do we believe as Catholics? Are we reading from the Bible? Folks who were pointing out during the first webinar, they read the Bible, very diligently, within their classes, and so that's a great piece. So it is, so some good questions going on here too with our Catholic identity and Catholic culture, because these two things, they're linked, and it's almost impossible to have sometimes one without the other. So some nice conversation for those of you who are still looking to get on the Today's Meet piece, which is Today's Meet, Faith-Filled Classroom. So good exchange of ideas there. Also, we have, one of the things we've been blessed with being formed over the last couple of years is these national standards and benchmarks for effective Catholic schools. And there's an entire section in there on mission and Catholic identity. Okay, so a really good resource. You've got the website there. For folks who are looking on how to build, faith in the families as that extends out from the classroom. If you don't know already, a World Meeting of Families is going to take place next year in Philadelphia. This is a major, major Catholic faith event. Pope Francis will actually be in attendance in Philadelphia for this event. So the webpage there, have that up for you that you can go back to. Has some good resources. Also, I don't know if you're aware of this. faithandsafety.org was actually built as a partnership from the Greek Orthodox Church and the U.S. Catholic bishops. And it's about how to use technology in a faith-filled way in the home, and what a good thing it is, and also how to keep it within a good, safe, healthy environment for kids. So a lot of practical suggestions and pieces there. So really good, couple good websites. Now I want to also look at this other piece of Catholic culture and how you develop in that classroom. Like I said, it is being very verbal and intentional about your faith and looking at everything that you do as prayer and this sacramental outlook that we can have in moving forward. And many folks are familiar with, the Catholic faith tradition, 7 sacraments, but also we have this very rich concept of sacramentality, that life is sacrament and that God's graces are all around us. It's actually one of the kind of concepts that distinguishes us from our Protestant brothers and sisters. And they're very good about talking about their faith, but one I think the unique things that we have in our tradition is the sacramental outlook in which, yes, we are a fallen people who, original sin has happened, but if we look closely at the world around us and the people and everything, God's grace is there. And all we have to do is dig in the world around us and we can find God. God's there. So being very public and intentional, one of the fascinating things is that the more we work our faith into conversation and language and the everyday things that we do, just in small personal ways, the huge impact that that has. And they have found in doing research on this that it is actually the informal, those personalized ways that often have the biggest impact on the faith formation of others. So it is good that we have these Catholic identity pieces. We have to have them, have to be strong in the schools. And one of the most impactful pieces of this is having a strong Catholic culture, the informal ways in which you approach your Catholic spirituality within the classroom. How do you do that? One of the best ways that I've seen in doing this is being very conscientious that you can infuse Catholic concepts into the day-to-day of your lessons. So heard a great lesson from a teacher who's just kind of walking through their room, and she was talking about lines of symmetry and how lines of symmetry divide things into equal and mirrored sides. And so the teacher was just talking to the third graders. You know, isn't it amazing if you drew a line down your body, how God made us, that one side would be perfectly reflected to the other. And that's just how God built us. And, you know, and she wasn't even doing a religion lesson. It was this other thing. But if you look at, say you take Catholic social justice and look at that, it is almost impossible not to find ways in which these tie into science, math, literature, all these other pieces, the social studies, it's all there. Think about collaborating on lessons with your Catholic social services. So amazing things, and more ideas are coming out here on the today's meet as well. So consider very strongly how you can go ahead and incorporate these into your teaching practices. Bishop Supich said, you know, has a beautiful piece here on the fact that we do need these Catholic identities, these formal pieces, but we also have to teach them how our Catholic faith is lived in a day-to-day experience and how we can see it in the world around us. So hopefully we're able to touch on some practical pieces as well as you move forward through all of this, some pieces for yourself, for your classroom, and having that strong understanding of the Catholic identity, of having a strong Catholic culture, and how the two are so interdependent. So, and if we can just shift a little bit in being very conscious in our faith and how we walk into the classroom, I really believe that you all are going to transform lives in the things that you do just through being conscious. Okay, so here is as well some contact information for me if you want to get in touch. My email address, my handle on Twitter, in which you can follow me. Again, for those of you not active with that, I encourage you strongly to look into it. It is you don't have to tweet what you had for breakfast. You look at some great professional development and dig into that. So, Kate, this would be our time where we're taking questions. I know there's actually been going on here this evening a lot of good exchange and conversation going on in today's meet. If there are any direct questions now, Kate will be handling those and feeding those on to me, and maybe we could talk a little bit more about some specific questions. I spent 45, 50 minutes just kind of rambling on talking to myself, but so, thoughts, questions?
So Jim, there was a comment earlier on today's meet, and it was, how do we make Catholic identity and culture authentic?
Mm-hmm.
It's a big one.
That is a big one, which quite frankly, I think it's one of the reasons why we have to start with ourselves first. You know, and building up your own personal faith lives. You know, there is obviously there's you know, headlines overrun a lot lately with Catholic schools kind of in conflicts with different folks, and I think some of that gets lost because we do lose the fact of that all of us there in the school, no matter whether we're working in the cafeteria or what our job is, that there is a huge impact of our faith lives onto those around us. So, boy, keeping it authentic, you know, it is that challenge of having this be our own real faith that we are living out and that we're helping others along because we're passionate about our own faith. So that Catholic identity, again, it's easy to, I use the idea of a mission statement. You know, it's easy to have a mission statement up on a wall, and that's an important piece of Catholic identity. And yet, if it's not a lived practice, if it's not part of the culture, then they're just lost words when so much beautiful ideas and crafting has kind of gone into putting that together.
Okay. Another question is if you have any suggestions about helping parents as primary educators of their children develop their own faith life.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that we can do is, a lot of times, especially in the elementary schools, we can really be very good about inviting parents in for plays, or for a mother's tea or things like that. Can we be conscious to invite them in for our faith activities as well? A lot of times we're good about drawing them in and inviting them for Mass, and that's a good piece. But how can we draw them in for some of our rich experiences? Can you work with your parish to go ahead and have family retreats and plan out some of those for the class? I had one of the great things that a parish of mine did that I was working at. A lot of small reflection groups that went on in the parish, and they organized one right after drop-off for the kids. So those parents who were free and available, after they dropped their kids off, 15 minutes after the school day started, there was a faith sharing group there at the parish, and it was really targeted for them. So trying to be conscious about different pieces there. Again, we all know there's no one magic bullet. It is trying different ways of reaching out to them and sharing, and this is where you have great resources from places like Catholic Ed Chat, these blogs and exchanges of ideas, and hopefully we'll be able to help you here with the NCEA as well and some of the pieces we put out, but to look for those different ways of reaching out to parents. It's being conscious about trying to do it.
Okay, and this came up in the earlier webinar. It's about addressing the idea of how do you promote Catholic identity and or Catholic culture to the non-Catholics or even the non-Christians in class. Mm-hmm. And that's both from the student perspective, but also inviting their families into that.
Right, and I think one of the things for us is that, again, it comes down to living consciously, passionately out the Catholic faith. I do believe that many of the church documents talk about, we are when we're a Catholic school, we're about being a Catholic school because it is what we are and what we do. This is the faith that we believe, and we are very comfortable in that. And we're okay with having a Catholic school and calling it a Catholic school and putting out the Catholic faith, and these are this is our Catholic Mass and our Catholic prayer services and our Catholic theology. So being comfortable in doing that, even though there are those who are not Catholic at the school, that's okay. Now, is necessarily our mission then to go out and make every non-Catholic student in the school a Catholic? I think we can do that and being respectful of their faith tradition. Now, if by being inspired by our faith tradition they want to join the Catholic faith, that's great. That's great. Are we only successful as a Catholic school if all the non-Catholics become Catholics? I don't know about that. And maybe you can take direction from your own, pastor, your bishop. But I know there is a lot on the idea that, maybe part of our role is in no matter what faith tradition they're observing, that they become passionate, that they become excited, that they become vibrant followers of Christ. If it's in the Catholic tradition, we can help them move forward in that, great. If it's in another faith tradition, we understand that. And so for a lot of those reflections and a lot of the thoughts out there from different bishops and folks is that we can be very comfortable in being actively Catholic and not apologetic about it whatsoever, but letting our own lived faith witness to others and move and inspire them.
Okay. And this,
have,
be the last question,
yes.
but sort of, what you just shared with us, and how would the passion for being Catholic relate to non-Catholics that these folks are teaching with at a Catholic school? So coworkers who are non-Catholics.
Oh, for the coworkers piece as well. I think it's a very similar piece. And someone was just talking about how, on the today's meet, we're a Catholic school and not a private school, and yet someone else kind of throwing out that, that we can be very passionate about those who have a love of Christ even not being Catholic. And for folks, especially during the last webinar, they were talking about, well, they have some colleagues who are not even, it's not that they're of another Christian faith, but they're just kind of apathetic to the entire faith concept. And I think in those scenarios, what we can do is, just be good and faithful with our own faith process, and offer our faith in ways that aren't overly intrusive. When someone's having a hard day, just let them know. I'll keep you in prayer. I lit a candle for you at church. I'm thinking of you. I'm praying for you. And can I do something for you? What can we do to reach out to them in practical ways and not just words of prayer, and those are great, but are there practical things that we can actively do to support them and show them how much our faith means to us, that we'd be willing to inconvenience ourselves to benefit them because we believe in our faith so much. So I think it's in that lived faith experience, and then as we're doing different things of living out our faith and being purposeful in our faith, and not being apologetic about the faith life that you live, you can do some things like, hey, I'm going to this retreat in a month. It's a weekend retreat. What do you think about coming in and joining me? And invite them in. We don't have to be, and sometimes as Catholics we can take that easy way out of, well, if I just live my life, I can let them be inspired. And that's a good thing. However, I think we do have to learn something, that our Protestant brothers and sisters are a far bit better than Catholics are at reaching out with our faith. We don't have to club people to death with it, but I think we can still put it out there, be passionate about it, be unobtrusive, inviting, and yet still living through example.
Okay, great. Well, it seems like we're wrapping up the questions discussion. Jim, is there any final thoughts you'd like to share with us before we conclude?
No, I think folks have managed to get a full volley of my thoughts. But I do encourage everyone, you're doing incredible work, absolutely amazing work, and the impact that is, it's just so clear in the faith lives of kids. So very grateful for that. Please keep it up. And in any way that we can be supportive, I know Kate is going to go ahead and share a couple of resources from NCEA, but just to know that we're there, we're very grateful for the work that folks are doing, and love the passion that folks have, and hopefully this has given you just a little bit of inspiration and focus, and some other great things. I certainly had wonderful, inspiring thoughts from others who have impacted me, so just trying to pass some of those.
Sounds great.
Okay, Kate.
Okay. Jim mentioned a few things during his presentation, namely the Architects of Catholic Culture book, which we do have available in our NCEA online store. And I also wanted to share with you information about a webinar series that begins next Wednesday. Dr. Lorraine Ozar, one of the authors of the National Standards, is going to be hosting a webinar series that takes a closer look into the standards themselves, and the one on Wednesday happens to be about Catholic identity. So we certainly invite you to participate in that. And with that, I want to thank Jim again for your time this evening, and I'd like to thank all of you as well. This concludes today's Catholic Culture in the Elementary Classroom, the Faith-Filled Classroom webinar. Just so you know, and as a reminder, we will be sending both the PowerPoint slides and the recorded presentation to you by email in the next day. And so look for that sometime tomorrow. And have a great evening, a safe evening, and we hope to see you back soon. Thank you.